Hello everybody, in today's video I'm going to be talking about the baby boomers. If you believe it or not, I say the baby boomers had a bad rap. Okay? I believe these baby boomers, as a generation, don't have a good reputation, at least in the Western world, because yes, back in the day, they inherited wealth, or they inherited the ability to be powerful, the ability to have religious beliefs, or, beliefs that could change the world and stuff like that. And obviously, there are many boomers out there that are not all evil, and they're not all greedy people, and they're obviously not all, people who are, afraid to pass down their knowledge. But a lot of the most powerful people in the world, as I am saying this at the time I posted this video, the most powerful people in the world are of that generation, okay? They are of that group. And people use this because they'll say, oh, you're from that generation, so therefore it must define the whole generation. Like, I get that there are a lot of baby boomers out there that didn't pass down their wealth, or didn't pass down their knowledge as much. And so, oh yeah, they're defending jobs that don't exist anymore or whatever. But it's like, they're not all like that, because I really do think that the baby boomers, the good ones anyway, never got a chance to really experiment, as in, like, never got a chance to really pass down their stuff. Or if they did, it was like decades later, So they never fully developed what it was to be a generation, so to speak. Now, again, I'm not trying to put pressure on you if you are a part of this generation, if you are a part of the baby boomer generation. Okay, I'm not going to try to push you to do that, because you're old, okay? Like, you're not going to be young again, obviously. You can't go back to the 50s or the 60s or the 70s. They're not going to come back. Those decades, or whatever particular stage of life, like, you're never going to be 36 again, is what I'm trying to say, But it's not exactly a bad thing, because now you don't have to deal with young people problems, So I can't exactly completely blame them for it, You just so happen to spawn in decades before I was born, Like that kind of thing. Before a lot of the big generations that dominate the workplace were born, Like you were born a long time ago, Back when the Beatles were still a thing, the Beatles were still the dominant thing, or something like that. I'm just giving an example. But it's like, it's so hard because they have so much power right now, And unfortunately, there's not much to be inherited if you're, say, a Generation Alpha, or a Generation Beta, or soon-to-be Generation Gamma, that kind of thing. Because Gen X is basically baby boomers, but with identity issues, and millennials are millennials. So there's that as well, and then there's obviously my generation, Generation Z. That's the current one. That's the current, soon to be either mostly or pretty much exclusively in their 20s. That kind of thing. And, what are you gonna do? Huh? Like, here in the USA, in my home country, if you're from the USA, United States of America, and you're of the baby boomer generation, your generation has at least another election or two, and that's going to be it for you guys, you know? Like, you at least have either 2028 or 2032 to really change things up. But it's not like it's going to automatically change, you know? Even after your generation, the last remaining of your generation finally dies off, even when that does happen, it's not like it can completely get unscrewed, because there are some things that are just, you're just going to have to live with, you know, because they hated housing for some reason, a lot of these people. And in my home country, there are a lot of people that are older that just are afraid of people building new homes and stuff. But it's like they can afford to say that, you know, they can afford to complain about, oh, you know, not in my backyard, because you can afford a yard in the first place. You know, like a lot of people in my generation are living in their parents' house because that's all that they can afford, you know? That kind of thing. So, you know, like, let people build new houses and stuff. Houses, okay? Not everybody can live in the city. Not everybody wants to live in the city. So, there's that. But yeah, there's only so much you can do when you're near the end of your life, you know? That kind of thing, or at life expectancy. So you're just going to have to do with what you can, you know, while you're still alive. And even when you're young, you don't know when you're going to die. You don't know, you know, if you were young like me. So it's just like, what am I supposed to do, you know? What am I supposed to do this? And people try to say, oh, my generation, Generation Z, is going to save the world when the baby boomers die out. Okay, so what if they unscrew what the baby boomers do, but at the process of doing that, they create a bajillion different problems that their generation, my generation, you know, created, and it doesn't come into effect, or most people don't realize it until, like, I don't know, 13 generations later. You know? That kind of thing. Like, you didn't exactly fix the issue. You're just replacing a problem with another problem, you know? Because even when Gen Z does get into power, which they probably will, yeah, again, they might fix all the problems that, you know, the baby boomers caused, but I don't know, something tells me that they're going to cause problems as well, you know, as a generation, because I guess what's a world without its problems, you know, without its flaws? But we shouldn't only be defined by flaws or only be defined by problems, okay? Alright? I don't know what else to tell you. You were doing stuff long before I was born. You were doing stuff long before my parents were born, you know? So, who knows? Who knows what my generation will do, or what my generation will truly have an effect on when they die off. You know, when my generation dies off, or when I die off. You know, like when I'm no longer alive. You know, it's not like you can just come back to the grave, at least, I don't know, maybe you could, but maybe, perhaps, who knows, a generation in, say, the 22nd century or something is gonna fix everything. But until that day comes where it truly doesn't doesn't fire back, where they fix problems and it doesn't create new ones. If we find a generation that does that in the future, until then, in the meanwhile, we're just going to have to deal with whatever the current thing is, you know? We're just going to have to figure it out from here, because there have been in the past historical periods similar to this. There have been, you know, golden ages and stuff like that, or whatever. Now, it has happened, historically speaking, you know, all the stuff that is going on. Things like this have gone on, with the exception of the internet, throughout a century or throughout the centuries. But it has rarely ever happened, things like this, within the same century, let alone the same decade or year. You know, like, that's the time period we're in. And we're also in a transition phase. So, in the next, I want to say, time of recording, meaning when this video was posted, in the next, I want to say, the next, about 30 years or so, everything is just going to change. Like, right now, it's changing a lot, and it's changing quite a bit, but something will really move. Something will really happen, you know? I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know what is exactly it's going to happen, but something will change, okay? I don't know how, I don't know what, but man, all this because a long time ago, humans started to exist for the first time. You could call it Adam and Eve, you could call it evolution, whatever the hell, or both, I guess. But we're in this mess, and you so happen to be there. You so happen to be in the whatever current now you're watching this in. You're watching this in. Excuse me. But yeah, like, we can't really fix the reputation of this generation, but you can at least give something that is worth dying for, you know, in this world. Because if you're going to die anyway, you might as well do something that's worth the death, you know. I'm not saying go kill yourself. That's not what I meant. I mean, when you do eventually die, you know, whenever you die, old, young, whoever you are right now, man, woman, I guess, race, ethnicity, whatever, languages, religions, you get the picture. You know, political worldview. Give yourself, you know, not just something to be remembered, but to something to be remembered intentionally. Like, people will go out of their way to remember it for you. You know, that kind of thing. The things that you did, you know. Try to be remembered for something that can be passed down for generations. And then they can use that, so that way they can do something similar or the same, and then pass it down to the many generations afterward as well. Whoever, you know, is still alive at the time, of course. And it's an endless cycle of birth and death. Well, I don't know about endless, but you know what I mean, like, for who's living. That kind of thing. But eventually, the clock will tick midnight, metaphorically speaking, and you'll be dead. What happens to you after then? Don't know. Can't say. I don't know what happens to you, the person, when you die. We probably know what happens to your body, but you could call it heaven or hell. You could call it whatever you want. But that's what happens, I guess. Well, anyway, yeah. What do you think? Are you a baby boomer? Do you think your generation is, cooked? I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But enjoy it while you still have it, I guess. You know? Because one day you won't, I assume. So, yeah, that's pretty much the end of the video. If you have any thoughts, ideas, any questions, answers, you can put it in the comments section below, or even, hey, make your own YouTube video about it. Anyway, that's all I gotta say for now about this subject. So, yeah. Bye!